Welcome to 101 East. I'm Steve Chow. What you see all around me are fields upon fields of poppy. Afghanistan is in the grips of a drug epidemic many say is far more dangerous than the Taliban. These fields now supply 90% of the world's heroin. And authorities appear unable or unwilling to stop those behind this multi-billion-dollar trafficking industry. This week, we're in the south of the country, in what has become ground zero in the global war against drugs. Afghanistan, once the ancient gateway between the East and the West. Today, it's at the heart of a deadly trade in narcotics. Under a bridge in the capital of Kabul, we witness the human toll illicit drugs are having on the country. It's a scene of abject misery. While heroin is grown and produced here and is mostly trafficked out of the country, increasingly Afghans themselves are falling prey to it. Latest studies estimate there are now 2.9 million drug users in Afghanistan, the highest per capita in the world. How much does this cost for a hit?
For this one? 50 rupiah. 50, yeah.
That's just 50 cents a gram.
I'm really sad why I'm here because...
Kareem Kambari's story is like many here. He turned to drugs after being unable to find a job.
I speak 4 different languages, Danish, English, Greek, a little bit Germans, but, it's nothing.
Sewage flows down the river next to where Kabul's addicts make their home. Kambari sees it as a symbol of how worthless their lives are.
After thinking, no place, no job, no money, no nothing, we are under the bridge.
Come here?
Yes, this is the only place I'm welcome to here, not any place,
But there is one woman attempting to rid her country of this addiction. Layla Haidari devotes her life trying to persuade people to give up drugs. She spends hours a day here, counseling, and at times, keeping the peace. Addicts here affectionately call Haidari Mama. They rely on her for everything, including removing the dead. Overdoses are common here. What happened to her, Mama?
Could be several reasons. It's filthy down there, and people get all kinds of diseases. They also die of the cold and of overdoses. It's just not fit for humans to live there.
What do you do now with these 2 bodies?
I've just called the police to take them away. We're not authorized to bury bodies, so we have to wait on the authorities. It often takes a while.
Few dare to go under the bridge, but Mama fearlessly wades into the crowds. Well, it's just a crush of people down here. There's probably about 1,000 under this overpass, and the smells are just assailing. It's a mix of human feces and garbage, and Mama comes here all the time. As we go into the dark recesses where the dealers are most active, it becomes more dangerous. Outside the shot of the camera are men who have just drawn knives. Our cameraman is told to stop filming. Mama herself has been severely attacked here and hospitalized, but she still comes. You are one woman. You've been beaten twice. Why do you still come here?
Well, they are human beings, and I want to fight for them. For as long as I'm alive, I will work to help people overcome their addiction.
But many worry that Haidari's persistence may be too much for the drug dealers operating here.
The drug dealer, you know, they have gun, they have knife, they have everything, you know.
And you believe the drug dealers could kill Mama one day?
Maybe not themselves, but with them money, it's gonna happen that things.
They're gonna pay someone to kill her?
Yes.
By the end of the day, police have yet to collect the bodies. Even in the Afghan capital, the death of a few addicts no longer raises an eyebrow. Life simply goes on around them. From Kabul, we head south to Kandahar, to the source of all this misery. It's in the countryside that most of the opium poppy, the plant that produces heroin, is grown. In 2014, farmers here cultivated a record 224,000 hectares of poppy. We've come back this spring to gauge whether this year is going to bring yet another record harvest. Government warnings against growing the crop are everywhere. But the deeper into the countryside we go, the less control Afghan authorities have. These are the Badlands, where the Taliban and drug lords call the shots. As we hit the back roads. Wow, so this is all poppy?
Yes.
Okay. We see few are heeding the government warnings. Acre upon acre of the season's new deadly crop are just emerging. Assalamu alaikum. We approach a farmer to ask why he's growing plants for drugs.
Yes, it's true. All the fields you see here are for poppy. To be honest, I would prefer to grow something else. But government officials haven't helped us with alternatives. So what choice do I have?
Fazil Rahman blames years of war and instability and says for poor farmers like himself, only poppy brings in the profits. For more than a decade, these agricultural areas of the South have been the scene of intense battles. NATO troops fought a fierce ground war among these rural compounds against the Taliban. Markets and crops were destroyed, leaving farmers with few ways to support their families. So you're saying life is better now that most of the fighting has stopped? Today, the NATO troops are gone. What's been left behind in his area, says Rahman, is an uneasy truce between the Afghan government and the Taliban. As we sit for tea, he confides that he and other farmers see this fragile security environment as an opportunity to make up for lost time.
Poppy guarantees cash in your hands. We make 10 times more with the drug than other crops. It means I don't need to be in debt and can feed my family of 10. The money we make isn't huge like people think. We borrow cash for the seeds, and in the end, we earn only a few $100s per acre.
But hanging over him is the constant fear that authorities will arrest him and destroy his crop, leaving his family with nothing. As Rahman returns to work, we promise to visit again during harvest to see whether his crops survive. At a military base 10 kilometers away, we meet up with Nasrullah Khan, one of the local police commanders in charge of counter-narcotics. He's invited us to follow him and his men as they hunt for poppy fields. His squad is a ragtag bunch of regular cops, reassigned just for the day to drug duty. For years, Khan was responsible for maintaining security on the highways and was only recently tasked to tackle the drug problem. Needless to say, in the fight against drugs, the police feel outmatched and outgunned.
I'm keenly aware how powerful the drug mafia is. It's 100% dangerous for us, but we as police have a duty, and we must fight them.
The team zeroes in on some fields and gets to work quickly. Some of Khan's police fan out to keep watch as heavily armed vehicles patrol the perimeter.
In 2014, whenever police tried to destroy poppy fields, they came under fire. They lost 15 men in just this small region alone. This year, they brought lots of firepower.
Even the tractor drivers carry machine guns. Khan tells me in the past the farmers' wives and children would also shoot at them.
The last time we were here, IEDs were exploding around us, and we were constantly under fire. Many of my officers were injured or killed. If we stayed here much longer, we may come under attack as well.
All around us, farmers and their families are watching the operation. Officers are told not to let their guard down. Due to attacks last year, police were only able to destroy 9 out of an estimated 5,000 hectares of poppy in this area. Khan doesn't blame farmers, saying the real criminals are the drug lords, including the Taliban.
The drug mafia force people to grow illegal crops. They make the big profits. The farmers are kept poor and in debt to them.
Khan confesses he believes the criminals are winning and tells us he's being given less and less money to pay for these types of operations.
We police can win this war on drugs, but we need the government to fund these campaigns. If they actually pay for the tractors, the personnel and the logistics, we can win, but it's not happening.
Back at police headquarters, Khan takes me to the evidence room. There is more than a ton of raw opium here, seized during recent raids.
So this is heroin as well.
He also shows me some high-grade heroin, ready to hit the streets.
So people would take this, swallow it, and they would smuggle it in their stomachs. Wow, even more drugs. Well, this is very interesting. This box here says it used to contain high explosive fragmentation grenades from the US. So someone's gotten hold of these boxes and instead of ammunition, they're now carrying drugs.
The deputy says often the Taliban trades drugs for weapons. There are millions of dollars worth of narcotics here, but Khan says it's only a tiny fraction of how much his force used to catch. Back in the capital, there are others struggling against the drug trade. After months of negotiation, we've been granted exclusive access to a secret government facility. No cameras have ever been allowed in. This is where high-level drug traffickers are supposed to face justice. These men have just been picked up for trafficking 37 kilos of heroin, a haul worth millions. The US and Britain have spent billions creating this special drug court. Judges and prosecutors are handpicked and often trained by foreigners. All this is supposed to ensure court officials are free from influence and intimidation. But Najla Tamori, a prosecutor of 8 years, says this is far from reality.
We face extreme danger every day in our jobs. Twice, thugs working for drug lords showed up at my house. I've since had to move homes to get away from them.
The court does send more than 1,000 traffickers to prison every year. But Tamori says rarely do they capture the kingpins.
The government is weak and the smuggler is strong. They use poor illiterate people to do their risky work. Those are the ones we often put on trial, not the bigwigs.
Last year, authorities did arrest one bigwig. This grainy photo is the only picture officials have of Laljan, a smuggling kingpin that controlled much of the drug trade in southern Afghanistan. In these courts, Laljan was found guilty of drug trafficking and sentenced to 20 years in jail. But insiders tell us he managed to buy his escape.
An internal investigation discovered that after his conviction in court, people working for the kingpin began paying off officials in the justice system to the tune of $14 to $16 million. That money secured his release, and to this day, he's been nowhere to be found. You talked about clean judges, clean courts, but then there are cases like Laljan. What happened there?
All those who are involved in exploiting the processes are under investigation. Within these areas,
Afghanistan's acting Minister of Counter-Narcotics, Haroon Shirzad, admits corruption in the justice system is still a problem. He acknowledges the harm cases like this have, not only on Afghanistan's reputation, but on future international funding.
We can assure the international community that the mistake that has been taken place will not be repeated.
Asked why drug production is skyrocketing despite years of efforts to crack down on it, Shirzad blames the international community, saying they've largely ignored the drug problem.
Their focus was only on terrorism and other sector development, but counter-narcotics was an isolated and marginalized agenda in their programs. This is the time when they realized that terrorism has been fueled and financed by the opium economy.
Shirzad says while the US and NATO countries have spent a few billion on eradicating drugs, hundreds of billions have been spent on fighting terrorism. He adds Western commanders often told their troops not to destroy poppy fields, fearing it would alienate the rural population. As a result, since the US invasion, drug production has exploded to 35 times what it was in 2001. UN officials, though, argue the Afghan government is equally at fault. Last September, Afghanistan welcomed in a new president, Ashraf Ghani. Hopes were high that in his opening remarks, Ghani would list eradicating drugs as a key government goal. It was not to be.
Afghanistan is having 22 national priorities, but counter-narcotics is none of them. If there is a strong political will for counter-narcotics, I'm very much optimistic. If, God forbid, there is no strong political will, then I'm not optimistic.
The seeming disregard for the issue is making criminals bolder. At a location we're asked not to reveal, we arranged to meet a big-time smuggler.
There he is, right? Yeah, there he is.
It's taken months of working contacts in Afghanistan's criminal underworld to get this meeting. The smuggler has agreed to show us his operation. We're told to conceal ourselves as we're following him deep into territory controlled by the Taliban. At one point, our contact disappears, and we must hide ourselves. Minutes later, he returns and takes over our vehicle. He tells us he's nervous, not of police, but of being seen with foreigners. If the Taliban catch us, they will think we're spies, and the smuggler is helping us. We pass more fields, and then minutes later, we near a compound and pull to a stop.
Well, I'm not exactly sure where we are at this point, but the smuggler assures us that we're safe. We're just going to go in right now and see what he has to show us.
The compound looks like thousands in rural Afghanistan,
Assalamu alaikum.
but this one conceals a dangerous stash.
Jodi Paher.
As we go inside, the smuggler's assistant is already moving the drugs.
Well, this smuggler certainly has a lot of opium. Look at all these bags, bags upon bags of opium. He was hiding it in this place here. It's quite interesting. He's been obviously using these bricks to stack up this hole so that when someone tries to perhaps look for the opium, they can't find it. He's opened it up for us to show us exactly how this is all done. How much do you make every year from smuggling drugs?
In a year, our gang can make $400,000 to $600,000. It depends, of course, on the business environment, but I'd say that's roughly our haul.
Do you think the government will ever be able to stop smugglers like yourself?
No, they'll never stop us. You see, we've tasted the profits, so we'll never let go. Yes, sometimes they try and raid us, but we have lots of drug labs and places to hide the goods. The border is also very porous, so there's no way to stop the flow.
The trafficker says drugs take a number of routes out of the country, with handlers moving it through neighboring nations to destinations in Asia, Russia, Europe, and increasingly, the US.
This is 1 month?
While the smuggler is armed, he says it's the Taliban in his area that protects the drugs.
These guys never touch the stuff, but they do guard our poppy fields. In return, we pay them a tax of around 10%. If any police come, they'll take them on. Really, I say to you, if there is no Taliban, there'd be no poppy.
Our smuggler is getting edgier, as he fears the Taliban could be close.
It looks like the boss smuggler is a little bit worried about us being here, and understandably so. This whole area is Taliban controlled. He's taken off out that door, and I think we'll probably have to leave soon too. Yeah, he's telling me to go.
Outside, he hides part of his stash, ready to smuggle it out. And then he and his assistant leave us. Several weeks later, and the poppies in Kandahar are in bloom. It's harvest time. People have come from across the country to work the fields. In a nation rife with unemployment, the UN estimates the illegal industry gives 400,000 people jobs. Over a course of 4 to 5 weeks, more than 6,000 tons of opium will be harvested. And in these fields, it's being done in plain sight of an Afghan military base.
Assalamu alaikum. Good to see you again.
As for farmer Fazl Rahman, his fields have survived.
So it looks like a good crop.
Yes, take a look. The small bulbs are 10 days away from being ready. The bigger ones are just 5 days from harvest. They're all in good condition, so we can expect a bumper crop.
Then Rahman lets us in on a secret.
Police destroyed some poppy fields nearby, but they never came here. Why? That's because we paid them a few $100s per hectare to leave them alone.
It's a story we hear again and again from other farmers, proving what we've long suspected, that it's not just smugglers, drug lords, and the Taliban profiting from drugs, but government officials as well. In a nation where corruption is rampant and virtually every side in the battle is on the take, one can't help but question Afghanistan's ability and willingness to stem the tide of drugs.